Welcome everyone to this video on the carbon cycle. And in this video, I want to discuss what is carbon and what is the carbon cycle. The first question is, what is carbon? Carbon is an atom and it is very important for making up biological or organic molecules. Maybe you remember from the chapter on the digestive system that we need carbohydrates, that we need fats, and that we need protein. Over here you can see an example of glucose molecules that are bound together in a starch molecule. And when you look closely, you can see that you find some carbon atoms in different places of these glucose molecules. And actually each corner over here represents a carbon molecule. In amino acids, which make up proteins, we can also find carbon atoms. Over here you can see one, and over here you can see one. And when we look at fats, you can also see that there's a long carbon chain connected to hydrogen atoms. So remember that we needed fats for our cell membranes. So we also need carbon to be able to make fats for our cell membranes. We also have carbohydrates in our cell membranes and in different other parts of our cells. So we also need carbohydrates, or we also need carbon to be able to produce these carbohydrates. And you remember that we need protein to build up cells and to make our muscles stronger, and we also need carbon to make protein. So carbon is very important. So organic molecules found in our body often contain both carbon and hydrogen. Maybe you remember that plants perform photosynthesis, and when they perform photosynthesis, they take carbon dioxide out of the air and produce glucose molecules, and that we can eat the glucose and then use the glucose to get energy, but we can also use those carbon atoms from the glucose to build up other types of molecules. So carbon can be stored in different places. What you see over here are different places where carbon can be stored. Maybe you know that carbon can be found in the air in the form of carbon dioxide, but carbon can be also stored in organisms. So as I've just explained, carbon is needed to produce carbohydrates, fats, and protein. So when your body is made up of carbohydrates, fats, and protein, that means that carbon atoms are stored in bodies as well. Carbon dioxide can be taken up by plants when they perform photosynthesis. And when that happens, the carbon dioxide gas is fixed in a carbon molecule. And that is how carbon can be transferred from one storage place, being carbon dioxide in the air, to another storage place, being a carbon compound in a plant, so carbohydrates, fats, or protein. Now, when animals eat plants, the carbon is transferred from one storage place, being molecules in plants, to another storage place, being molecules in animals. Now, the blue arrow represents photosynthesis, and in this case, the yellow arrow represents animals eating plants. But plants and animals can also die, and when they die, their body is on the ground, and bacteria and fungi, which are also called reducers or decomposers, they can take the carbon molecules and break it down. Now, when these processes happen, so when the reducers and decomposers like fungi and bacteria break down carbon, they also produce some carbon dioxide. And maybe you remember that we, animals, and plants also produce some carbon dioxide when we perform respiration. So what you see in this overview is that plants can take up carbon dioxide gas from the air when they perform photosynthesis, and that carbon compounds can be transferred from one organism to the next, but that also these organisms release carbon dioxide back into the air. And if you look closely, you can see that this is some sort of cycle. There are some arrows that represent carbon being released into the air, and there's an arrow that represents carbon being taken up from the air. Now, one thing that I need to add is that when carbon compounds are in the soil for a really, really long time and there's a lot of pressure, it can become a fossil fuel. Maybe you know that fossil fuels are, for instance, coal or oil. And when we burn these fossil fuels, since there's a lot of carbon stored in fossil fuels, we also release carbon dioxide into the air. Another way of how we can release carbon dioxide into the air is when we make human-made or human-used products. So when we make woolen products or wooden tables, or when we make leather and later on it becomes waste, then we burn these products and then we also release carbon dioxide in the air. You can see that it's still a cycle, but a few of these things are happening at a very high rate. So the burning of fossil fuels happens at a very high rate. The burning of waste products made by humans is happening at a really high rate. And also respiration from animals is happening at a really high rate because of humans wanting to eat meat and fish. So some of these processes where carbon is released into the air happens at such a high rate that the plants cannot really keep track of taking up the carbon dioxide from the air and storing it into their carbon compounds. So that is why the carbon dioxide in the air kind of adds up over time, and why we kind of have this carbon dioxide problem right now. So let's summarize. The first thing that we have learned is that carbon is an atom that is found in carbohydrates, fats, and protein. That carbon is taken up from the air by photosynthesis, and that carbon is released into the air by respiration and burning products containing carbon-based molecules, like wood, fossil fuels, leather, and other products that are made up from natural materials. Please let me know when you have feedback on this video or when you have any remaining questions. I would highly appreciate your feedback and questions because I'm still quite new to this and I would really like to improve. And I hope you have learned a lot from the video. Good luck with studying. Bye!